One challenge that I've been making for myself and that I'd like to turn around and make for the listeners is to say yes to one thing that initially you wanted to say no to.
You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before FI. Using FIRE and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to FI instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a FIRE movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm absolutely stoked to have our guest on today. We've got Justin Lee Peters on the podcast. If you don't know Justin, he's been doing some great things in the FI space. He's the awesome host of the FI Minded podcast, formerly the Struggle is Real podcast, which he started in 2020. And 175 episodes later, he's still going. He's done the corporate gig for around 7 years and then transitioned to entrepreneurship and now runs SimplePod Studios, a really cool podcast production company with his younger brother, Kyle. Now, I really wanted to get Justin on the show because his message is very similar to ours, which is about enjoying the journey to FI and taking advantage of the incremental freedoms you unlock on the way. So Justin's unlocked a few of those things on his journey, and it's what I wanted to dive in today. So Justin, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for your time.
Greg, this is an honor, man. You are crushing. I'm so glad you reached out. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Was there anything else that you wanted to add to that? Was there anything else that's keeping you busy right now?
No, I think you crushed it on the intro. That covered a lot of things.
All right. Okay. So for the guys that don't know, you could just tell the guys, where are you in the world right now, actually? Because I know we speak to a lot of people around the world.
Yeah, I'm calling in from Austin, Texas. It's 8 p.m. here, so you're going to get the tail end of my day, but I'm so excited.
Awesome. So just wanted to start off with just to understand, people, listeners love numbers and understanding things about, where are people on their FI journeys. So in terms of your sort of like your FI progress, Justin, can you just give us an understanding of, what current stage you're at? What's your actual overall goal you're trying to get to?
Yeah, overall goal somewhere between probably $1 and $1.2 million if I'm got to run my 4% rule. That's a moving target every time. I kind of just track it against my current expenses, and it's kind of slowly been creeping up. And my girlfriend would love for me to increase my FIRE number even more than that, but I'm not overly concerned about it. And then currently, I'm about 70% of the way there. I'm in between about 700 to 800, depending on when the markets where the markets landed this afternoon.
Awesome. And I think in terms of like the kind of milestones, is it correct to say that you've hit your Coast FI number a while back?
Yeah, I hit Coast FI, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know when, like from a percentage or even a number standpoint, I would really say Coast FI. I mean, from a theoretical standpoint, definitely, especially if we're just looking at it from a traditional retirement age. I mean, if projections play out on an average on the stock market, I should be fully retired or at least fully FI by 36, 37, which is about 4 to 5 years away from now. But yeah, we'll see how this plays out. I'm not overly concerned about it. I feel like I'm in the Coast FI mindset, regardless if I'm statistically there or not right now.
Yeah, I like that. I like that how you're not too concerned. And I think that's a really good place to be in, by the way. And then in terms of like your portfolio, can you give us an idea of your investment strategy, where things are held?
Yeah, I have a pretty boring and simple approach to investing, which maybe most listeners will appreciate, but almost nearly all my investments are in the stock market. I do have some cash and some bonds, but no real estate. I still rent. I don't own any rental real estate, so I don't play in that space. Nothing in the crypto space either. So yeah, probably about 10% cash and bonds, 90% stock market. And I'm split between a total international and a total US stock market fund, and probably diverse or spent around half of those in retirement accounts, 401ks and IRAs, and about half of that in taxable brokerage accounts.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, very, yes, we are, we have very similar sort of investment strategies. And I like that, just keeping it simple, no need to overcomplicate it. And it's something you don't really want to think about too much. And I think that's the beauty of it.
I really don't. I've been trying to simplify more and more over time. And I've even considered at different moments being in real estate, but just from a lifestyle design and a life simplicity standpoint, it just doesn't interest me, even if it diversifies my portfolio a little bit more. I'd rather work a little bit more, make a little bit more, and have a little bit more in a stock market than have to be thinking about rental real estate as an investment strategy at this current moment.
Awesome. So just talking about, so obviously you've got to this point now where you're, yeah, nearly there to your sort of FI targets. Where did this all start? Like your FI journey, like from like how long have you been on this? Once you knew about FIRE and financial independence, like when was that, and what was the sort of led you up to where you are today? Really, take us through that story.
Yeah, I've always been both entrepreneurial focused and a pretty good saver. My dad taught me a lot of really great personal finance principles, but I didn't really get into investing until post college. Whenever I finally had a set up a 401k and make an investment choice at that point in time. I did end up utilizing a quote financial advisor for a couple of years, and ended up turning out to be an insurance agent that sold me a terrible product that wasn't the right time for me. And I would say my FI journey really started when I picked up the book "I Will Teach You to Be Rich." This was probably 2016 or 17ish time, so maybe about 8ish years ago. And I read that book, realized this whole investing thing isn't as hard as people make it out to be. Fired my financial advisor, insurance agent, rolled money into a DIY program, and then pretty much been managing my investments on my own since then. But I would say my story actually gets really interesting the summer of 2019. I'd been working for a company at that point in time for 7 years, and it was a fine job. And by fine job, I don't mean I wasn't in the wine industry or doing something really fancy. I literally mean the job was just okay. The job was fine. I worked with great people. I had a great boss. The work was okay, but it just didn't light me up. I wasn't really passionate about it or excited about it. And I thought the change that I really needed at the time was to move to a different employer in the same industry. And I made that change without a whole lot of forethought to it. And I recognized very early on, whenever I made that change, that not only was that not the right decision for me, it was a worse decision for me. Then I lost the community I had at my old employment. I was working for somebody that was a very laissez-faire manager and not very involved. And I didn't really love the work that I was stepping into. But here I was 3 months into the job. And if you can imagine, I was going into a sales role. So I made the big dog and pony announcement on LinkedIn. I'm changing these roles. I started reaching out to people, trying to drum up some sales. I was doing all of this work, and people were asking me about my new job every single day. But here I was on the other end, realizing and knowing it's not what I really wanted to do. But the conundrum was I didn't know what it was. Like I wasn't sure what I really wanted to do. So I continued on that path until one day I had a really, really important conversation that really changed the trajectory of my life.
That's interesting because I think it was Gillian Johnsrud. She said something like, sometimes those 7 out of 10s, those 6 out of 10s, they're just okay. And I think that's even more scarier because some people, we can continue going on the 7s out of 10 jobs in terms of satisfaction of them, and they just carry on. Well, they're just okay, but they're not great. So
Yeah.
it's good that you kind of stop yourself in those tracks and recognize that. So,
I would love to say that I did, but I probably dragged my feet even longer than I should have at that job. I moved from my hometown of St. Louis, which is in the middle of the United States, to the coast in San Diego. And I thought in that transition, I would leave my employer, but they extended the opportunity for me to work remote. And at that point in time, I took a very conservative approach and ended up saying yes to that remote transition and continued to work for them for another year. Although in my heart, if I was really listening to my intuition, I probably wanted to take that opportunity to make a change. But both financially and kind of mechanically, I was a little too scared to actually make that change. So that fine job finally did come to head with me, and I really wanted to seek something else out. And I'm actually really glad the next job wasn't another 7 out of 10, but more so like a 3 out of 10, because it kind of lit me on fire immediately and kind of forced me into what was about to be a mini retirement.
Amazing. So before I jump into the sort of transition bit, in terms of, you said you were working, so it must have been early on in your sort of fire journey. Did you have a high savings rate at that time? Did you try to really push that upwards? How
Yep.
much are we talking
Yep.
about as well?
Yeah, I was probably always investing somewhere between 25 to 50% of my income. I've been a heavy saver, especially through my
Mm,
20s. It grew as my income grew. I had very little growth in terms of like my budget or my expenses, but my income grew pretty quickly from probably 22 years old to my late 20s. I was probably starting at somewhere between $10 an hour as an intern and at 19 years old, and got a job out of college making 50 grand. And then eventually found myself into a role where I was making over 100 grand. And at that same progression, I was maybe spending $20,000. And by the time I was making $100,000, I was probably spending somewhere around $30,000. So I wasn't 2xing my expenses like I was 2xing my income, which has been great because even the increase that I did have made me kind of feel like a king. I was like not living with 4 roommates. I was only living with 2 roommates, and I wasn't living in like 20 minutes away from downtown, but 10 minutes from downtown. So I made these kind of small incremental improvements that meant a lot to me. But I also got to double down and build even more into my nest egg. So it was a really important part of my whole journey. But I'm very glad that those days are behind me, and I'm less concerned about how much I'm investing on a day-to-day basis now.
that's it. And then, so you mentioned about you had like an interesting conversation when you were in this sort of 3 out of 10 job. I think it was like a coach or something like that. But could you talk us through that transition period? What was that spark? Who did you speak to before you made that transition?
Yeah, so I actually spoke to a career coach, and not because I was looking for career guidance. I was actually interested in potentially being a career coach, and I was just kind of taking some flyers and doing some informational interviews to kind of figure out what was next. Like I did start to make some progress, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go find another job that I'm really excited about. So I was having a conversation, really just a networking opportunity with him, and we got into this conversation about my current situation, and I told him that I set aside some money and whenever I moved and I'm ready to kind of make the change or make a pivot, and I'm financially ready to be able to like not make a ton of money that I was essentially making at that point in time. And he stopped me dead in my tracks and he just said, Justin, are you really got to wait out your current job for another 9 months so that you don't have a blemish on your resume? I thought you had to make every job last 1 year, or else employers would scoff at you or look at you like you were a potentially bad candidate. So I kind of told him I was waiting for the 1 year mark, but in the meantime, I was looking for what might be the next move. And then he kind of gave me this profound idea, at least profound at the time, which was, why don't you just take some time off? Like, why not just like quit working for a little while and invest in yourself in some projects or some hobbies that you've always wanted to do, but you've never been able to because of work. And that was the very first time. I think I was 26 at the time. That was the very first time. I've been working since I was 14, that I thought about a career break or some kind of mini retirement. And I never thought that was something that I'd do in my 20s, probably even in my entire career as a hardworking Midwest boy from a like kind of a farm rural area. I didn't think people could take time off in their 20s. But it sat on me. And sure enough, about 6 weeks later, I ended up pulling the trigger. I left my job, called my best friend on my way home, asked him if he'd be the first guest on my podcast, launched a podcast 6 days later. And it's been, smooth sailing pretty much ever since then.
Yeah, and I think when you're on this FI journey, obviously you build obviously a bit of a nest egg behind you. You build up a bit of a savings to a point where you could take risks. It gives you a bit more confidence to do these kinds of, as you mentioned, your mini retirement, a sabbatical at that stage, quit a job that you've been in for a few months. That must have helped in some way through that transition, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely gave me some reassurance that I've been doing a lot of things right up until that point. And even if I took a year or two off financially, I would be okay. And I was so much further along than so many other peers. I mean, I was talking to people in their 40s and 50s, and I felt like I was even further along than they were. So it gave me a little bit of the confidence to make the decision and to go and get something. And whenever you start surrounding yourself with other minded individuals, they tell you the same thing and they reassure you that we're this anomaly, that we're doing these kind of crazy things. But now I'm a big believer, and I talk about it a whole lot about incremental freedom. And I wish I would have even pushed myself further throughout this whole process to start enjoying a lot of the incremental freedom that was given to me along the way, not just the freedom that I'm going to get once I reach FI. But that was kind of the first moment that I felt like I really took advantage or took a chance on myself and started to utilize some of the freedom that I've afforded myself because of being such a heavy saver and such a prudent spender over the last, I don't know, 20, 25 years at that point in time.
So obviously you've been working for 7 years, and then you stop for 7 months, and usually like these long term, people usually go on like a holiday where it's a 1 week or 2 weeks, but taking 7 months off, that's quite long. And yeah, what was the feeling like? What did you plan? What did you do? Could you talk us through that?
Yeah, the answer to your first question, the feeling was weird. It was very hard to actually get used to not waking up on a routine basis and having a structured day of work. I'm very type A. I like to stay pretty busy. Even as I'm kind of entering Coast Fi, I still like to stay fairly busy with things. So that was like an odd scenario. Like I would wake up and I really centered my day around a couple of things. One was reading a book. I'd always read a book for 20 to 30 minutes every single day. And I'd read the most amount of books I've ever read whenever I was on my mini retirement. Then I would go for a run. I got back into running, and running is really important to me now. And my mini retirement really set that forward and made running a habit for me. And then lastly, I do one important task, usually related to my podcast. And I would spend maybe an hour or two prepping for an interview, editing an episode, publishing, marketing my show, and that was my day. And it didn't feel like a whole lot, especially as somebody that had been running on fumes, probably working 10-hour days and doing extracurriculars pretty routinely, that I would get done at like 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it took me like a month. Like there'd be this like unsettling feeling in me that I'm like, I should be doing something right now. I should be crossing something off my to-do list. I should be working on something else. But I really tried to force myself by the time I knocked out kind of my big three, my three important things, that I can go on and do whatever I want for the rest of the afternoon. So I know you're a Marvel fan. I ended up binging the entire all the Marvel movies. So I started at the very beginning of the chronological timeline and watched every single one of them, which was like a blast. Now I'm a huge Marvel fan. So that was like a fun thing that I did. I told you I read a bunch of books. I did a couple of fun fitness challenges like Goggins 4x4x48. I ran every day of all of the month of March. I did like a lot of fun things that I just like set myself up. And then I just like spent a lot of downtime too. I hung out with family a lot. Actually, I ended up taking my sabbatical at the end of 2019, and it was supposed to run through the summer of 2020. Everybody knows what happened in 2020. So I got locked up with COVID come halfway through my sabbatical. And I ended up playing a lot of board games with my parents-in-law at that point in time, and got to meet them and got to know them at a deeper basis. And it was so great. Like some mornings I just go out on their porch and drink a coffee for 20 minutes and just look out into the pasture. Like I tried not to put too much pressure on myself for what I need to get done on a day-to-day basis.
Along with all the sort of the productive things that you've done, I like those sort of simple things as well. As you said, just spending time with your parents, just on the porch, and that's the similar thing that I done on my last one. Like just going to the local park with my dad, playing basketball or something, or just something simple like just chilling in a park or something like that. So just those little moments, those are fantastic as well.
For sure.
And then so you obviously went through that 7 months. Your coach said, "Oh, why don't you start some projects?" So obviously one was the podcast. Was there any other ones that you kind of started?
The podcast was the major one. So
Mhm.
that career coach that I was talking to left me with some really timely advice, and he said, if you do a sabbatical, promise me one thing: spend the first half of that sabbatical not thinking about what was the next job. Don't do any informational interviews. Don't go out and do some networking. Don't be job searching. Spend the first half of the sabbatical doing something that you've always wanted to do, but never had time because of work. And as soon as he said that, I knew what that was. 8 months before that conversation, I had bought two blue Yeti microphones, and I put them up on my shelf. And I was like, I'm going to start a podcast this year. And that was probably March of 2019. Then April came by, then May came by, then June came by, and there they sat on my shelf collecting dust. I read some articles about starting a podcast, but that was all I did. And then it was that one conversation, that one moment that I ended up quitting. And then the 6 days from me booking my best friend as my first podcast guest and me having that first conversation with him, that I actually went ahead, moved forward, and did some action on that podcast. And I'm so glad I did, because it did kind of become a little bit of my lifeline at that time. I told you I'm a type A. I really like to actually do productive things. And when COVID shut and canceled a lot of my travel plans down, podcasting became a central focus of what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And little did I know it would turn into a career or something I really like center a lot of my identity around, but it has been a whirlwind in the best way possible. And I'm so glad I did it.
I think at some stage, your brother Kyle said to you something about, "Oh, maybe we could do something entrepreneurial around this." Could you tell? Yeah, could you talk us through that?
Yeah. In current day, I run a podcast editing and coaching service. So we help, at this point in time, we're working on 19 different shows, a lot of different service based business providers, helping them launch their podcast, edit their podcast, and grow their podcast. And it would seem like that the me starting a podcast and me getting here would make obvious sense. I have this entrepreneurial itch. You figured I came up with this idea some way along the path, but I didn't. It actually happened about 2 years into my journey as a podcaster, a solo hobbyist podcaster, that my brother came on board. He called me up one day. He's like, dude, love the content of your show, but your audio quality is rough, man. Can I please help you? And he comes from a music production background. So editing podcasts came fairly easy to him. He understood audio engineering, and he started working on my show and then came back to me not too long after that, having his own career crisis. And he said, you know what? I think I'm going to quit my job, and I think I'm just going to start freelance podcast editing. Could you help me find a couple of clients? And at that point in time, I'd got to know a lot of people in the world of podcasting. So I started calling on friends that I'd met over the last couple of years. And I had so much fun kind of helping him start his freelance business that eventually I went to him and I was like, dude, can we just do this together? And then here we are 4 years later, kind of outgrowing a freelance business and really turning it into an agency at this point in time. But I love it. And I'm so glad that he pushed me to do it.
Yeah, so what's it like, sort of the entrepreneurial side? And you've obviously been doing that for a number of years now. Obviously, from going from the sort of corporate side, and then now you're in sort of entrepreneurial. What is your day to day like? And has it helped or hindered your sort of FI sort of plans in any way?
Yeah. So after my sabbatical, I re entered the workforce and ended up getting a full time job. And really, up until recently, I've maintained a full time job and built a business on the side. And then sometime over the last year, that time kind of flopped on itself. The business got to a place that it was a full-fledged business and it really needed my full-time attention. And with that, I started to pull back on my 9 to 5 and really turn it into part-time work. So from a financial standpoint, I've had a lot of really good stability, kind of growing a business from $0 to what it is today, while kind of slowly shrinking the income that I'm getting from a stable W-2 job or employment job through an employer. And I wouldn't take that back for anything, but there were moments and periods where they were both felt like full-time jobs. And I almost wish I would have taken a step back a little bit sooner. If I were to kind of do the path, I probably would have put more focus on my business earlier. But now it's kind of my central focus of my day to day. And there are moments that I'm like, man, it'd be so much easier just to have a 9 to 5 job and that's all I do. And I kind of punch in, punch out every single day and not worry about anything else. But I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and it feels so aligned with my identity now that I truly can call myself a full-time entrepreneur. And it feels so right. And it's so fun to grow something with like someone like your brother, supporting each other. Cause my brother's full-time in it. Like this is his lifeline in terms of finances. So it's really cool to help him hit his financial goals, building this business together, and me to get more and more confidence that I can build something on my own and it can support the lifestyle that I'm currently living.
Yeah, amazing. So you being on just the FI journey, that you managed to take a mini retirement. That's something you've unlocked. You've obviously transitioned to a different sort of career in a sense. And then you just mentioned, although you went back to kind of working sort of the 9 to 5, you've scaled that down. You've managed to scale that down to part time. And so just to clarify, have you totally stopped that corporate job now, or are you still doing that part time?
Yeah, I'm still doing it part time, and it's really interesting. It's probably one of those like duh kind of moments again whenever my brother came to me and kind of launched our business. But I got another duh moment. Like whenever I started pulling back from work and doing less and less work at this employment, I honestly started enjoying the rest of my hours more and more because I started dropping. I naturally had to drop some of the work, and I moved a lot of the work off that I didn't really enjoy. That wasn't either creatively or strategically or critical thinking that like really lights me up from a day to day standpoint. I'm also less involved in the work from a day-to-day basis too, and really just an individual contributor kind of zoned in on his kind of zone of expertise or genius. So I really like that work too. Like it's like hard for me to be like, you know what, I want to entirely give it up because there's a part of me that does like some of that corporate work and the things that I do. And at the level that I'm currently invested in doing it in, it feels really right for me.
Yeah. And then, so I could just imagine someone listening to this thinking, oh, I'd love to do part time work. How did you pull it off? Because I'm sure it's not the easiest conversation. There might be some, negotiations happening. How was it for you? Was it straightforward or quite
It,
difficult?
it's it could probably be a difficult conversation, both mini retirements and part-time work, kind of negotiating lifestyle, like designing your life around work versus, work being designed around your life. It's doable. And I think it's very doable for many people. But I think it starts with one really, really important step, and that's being a high performer. Like whenever you're really good at your job, whenever you make yourself really valuable, you start to be able to call the shots and not necessarily take advantage of an employer, but there are smart employers and smart managers out there that realize they'd rather get a portion of a very high performing employee than 100% of an underperforming employee. And so I think if you're somebody that knows you might want to move towards part-time work, you're maybe someone that wants to take a 3-month mini retirement, even negotiate a raise, like many of things that are important milestones in your path to FI, you got to start looking inward first and ask yourself, how can I be a valuable employee? And I did that over a long course of time. Actually, the person I'm working for currently in this part-time capacity rehired me. I left that job initially from that I was working at 7 years. I went to that other employer. Then I took a mini retirement. Then I worked for a startup. Then she called me up one day and was like, "Hey, I moved roles. I'm in this team. I'm looking to hire somebody. What would it take to get you to come back to my team right now?" And I got to lay out the terms. And a lot of those terms were centered around I run this podcast. So I'd want to be able to take interviews during the day. I want to network for my business. And, we started almost immediately with a little bit of lifestyle design and work because she was like, manage your calendar. You're a big boy. Like, I'll give you projects. You need to be at meetings whenever you get invited to meetings. But if you manage your calendar, you block the time that you need for the projects, for your work, for those interviews, etc. I don't care when you get the rest of your work done. If you want to work on a Saturday afternoon, go for it. So she kind of like almost initiated that first step with me. And then I've been continuing to show up year after year after year, being a high performer. And with that, you get the luxury to call your shots and get a little bit more flexibility from your employer.
Wow, she sounds like an awesome boss.
She is an awesome boss. And at the end of the day, like mechanically, you got to present the option as a win-win. And I went to her
Mm.
and I knew we were going through a heavy period whenever I made the ask to go part time. We had just made a major acquisition. Our team was already thin. And I told her, hey, I really want to focus on my business, but I don't want to leave you high and dry. I've laid out this 12-month plan for when I'm going to slowly start backing off my hours. I want to help you transition some of this work to a different team member. I've already started writing instructions for some of the work, and I've identified some of the work I know I can immediately move to them. If you give me the authority, I'm happy to book time to train that team member. Here's kind of my plan. Here's the other projects that I think are really high impact projects that I would still like to own. So I made it a really simple plan for her to say yes to, because I showcased why it would be a win-win.
Wow, that's really good to obviously have your, you made your plan in place. And yeah, as you said, it's a win-win. That's a negotiating tactic to make make it good for both parties. So now I'm just thinking, okay, how does like your week work? Like, what days do you do your part-time work? What days do you do your sort of your podcast stuff? What days do you do your podcast production thing? Like, yeah, I know you have lots going on. How do you structure your week?
A
Or is
lot of
it sort of
finessing.
random?
No, it's a lot of finessing, but honestly, I feel like I like to put a lot of organization to it too. I'm really big into time blocking and kind of structuring different parts of my day for different things that are going to be happening. So both with my business and my part-time work, I have meetings that I'm required to be at. But I don't need to set those meetings at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 4 p.m. I like to box those meetings into certain times where I know I can run back to back to back meetings. And then I'm just in meeting kind of in my meeting mode, where other moments I need a lot of time for concentrated deep work, both for my business and part-time work. They both required moments and periods where I need an hour, 2 3 hours to really spend on a project that I'm ready to unravel and start working on. So I try to strategically structure that in each of my weeks. I am currently working on meeting list Mondays, so I try not to book any meetings on Mondays. It's first day of the week for me. I can get in. I know I'm going to knock out probably 3 important projects for my business that day. That regardless of how the rest of the week goes, it's got to be a successful week of business because I had those 3 things already done and accomplished on my Monday. Then another practice that I put in place is no meetings before 10 a.m. So my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I try to leave 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. as kind of deep work time where I can jump in and start focusing on just one high value project, either for my part-time work or for my business. And then I also give myself an hour to prep for the meetings that are ahead and clean up my inbox and kind of get that cleared out and done. And then my Tuesdays through Thursdays, 10 to 3 p.m., I'm typically in meetings. I have open availability both for part-time and for my business where people can start booking time on my calendar. I typically do about 15 to 20 meetings a week. So it gets pretty heavy pretty fast in those point in times, but I can keep things rolling pretty quickly because I have back to back to back meetings. And then Friday afternoons is a something I'm currently now working on or recently implemented, which is fun Fridays. Fridays after about 2, maybe 3 o'clock, if it's a nice day outside, I like to jet out and go walk the trail in Austin, go grab my paddleboard and do some paddle boarding. It's really a time for me to connect with nature, to be outside, to do something that's going to fill my cup and honestly celebrate a week of hard work.
Yeah, I love those things that you said, like, yeah, set time blocks for it, all your meetings in one place. But then I love how you've included like fun aspects to it as well. You do need that time to sort of de-stress and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Like, as you said, your Fridays, I think you mentioned it's this sort of 3:30 p.m. outdoor rule, which I
Yep.
love.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fantastic. And I've taken that one on board.
Yeah, I totally forgot to mention too. I was like trying to push a rule. I get less of it now because it's been 100 degrees Fahrenheit here in Austin for 2 months now. So I don't enjoy being outside as much. But in the fall and the spring, if it's a nice day out, it's like, 60 to 90 degrees out. It's sunny. If it's 3 o'clock and I'm done with meetings and it's a nice, beautiful day out, regardless of what day it is, I try to go play outside for at least an hour or two. I'll go piddle around in the garden. I love my garden, my flowers, my vegetables. So I'll go weed or work on some of my plants, or I'll go pick up soccer, or I'll go walk, or I'll go do something that fills my cup. And the thing is, I can always come back come 6, 7 o'clock and do a little bit more work. Like that's fine. But I've really been trying to take advantage, knowing myself personally that I love being outside, that if it's a beautiful day, stop staring out the window in your office and just go out and enjoy it.
Yeah, get that nature bathing in. No, that sounds great. And it just begs the question that what I'm thinking about is let's say in a few months' time, just theoretically speaking, you do hit your FI number, what would change in what you're doing now? Like, let's say, yeah, you do hit your FI target in a few months. Is there anything that would change at all in your day to day, your week to week?
Yeah, it's such a unsatisfying answer, but I don't think a ton would change. But I do think some micro changes are currently happening and will probably continue to happen at the same rate that they're currently happening. A few examples is I'm continuing to fire clients that don't align with kind of how I like to do business, or outsource work that doesn't fill my cup but needs to get done at work. Continue to pull back on part-time hours and really force myself into being honest with how much I want to do in that kind of capacity, and just kind of focus on the work that I find really fulfilling and meaningful. But then I'd also just like to spend some. Like I'm I, from an income standpoint, I'm pretty covered. But the thing that I'm probably struggling with the most in terms of my own personal finance journey right now is just being more comfortable spending money. And I think if I hit my FI number and I'm going to continue to do work at the same capacity I am, and therefore have the same amount of income that I'm currently having, I'd like to put less of that towards my long term investing goals and more of that into the here and now. And many of those things would probably be the things that many of us love, like travel. But even today, I was at an art show and my friend was having his very first art show. He got a couple of photos into this gallery, and it was like it's first show, and he had a three photos up, and they were like a little bit of money. It's like $250 for a print. And a prior me, even 3 years ago, I'm like, man, there's no way I would buy something at that price. And now I'm like, you know what? I think it would be kind of fun at the end of the show to just go buy one of his prints, maybe even anonymously, not even tell him, just like buy it, tell the buyer that I would rather not share who bought it, and just let him have that joy in that moment and kind of share my income with him, because that would make my day. And I want to continue to do more things like that now.
Oh, that's amazing. So yeah, so you've kind of throughout your journey, you've designed your life closer to what it would be when you do retire. And you kind of, in a way, although you said that you might need only a few little changes, that's amazing. Like you're already living a life that you don't really want to retire from it, because you said you're not going to be changing that much. And I think well done you. And that's amazing to hear. And so that's really cool. So yeah.
Yeah, I know you and I both love Jess, but it's kind of the line of, build a life that you don't want to retire from. And that's kind of what I'm working towards right now. Like, you don't actually need financial independence if you have a life that's sustaining your day-to-day bills and paying for everything. Sure, like you don't know if that will ever change, so I will still work towards pursuing financial independence, but it just becomes less and less critical for me to expedite that process right now, because like I kind of love my life. Like I love the work that I'm doing, and especially on the podcasting front, I would never give up that business, at least immediately. Like it would take me a long time to kind of divest from that. And sure, my goals might, or my focus might change in later years. Like especially if a kiddo came into my life, then I'd want to drop everything and probably spend a lot of focused time on raising a kid. But right now, I love my life, so I'm not rushing to make a lot of major changes.
Nice. All right. So, Justin, before we go to the quick fire question round, one thing I just wanted to touch on quickly was you talk about FI bucket lists before. Yeah, could you? I mean, I'm sure that's a really great concept, and I'd love for you to just quickly share your thoughts and what's on your list.
Yeah. So 5 bucket list is very similar to just a bucket list in general. You know what? A life list, a bunch of things that you want to do throughout your life. And I took that same concept but brought it into my FI journey, because I wanted to be working towards something. Like I wanted to have an idea. It kind of sparked one time after the third time somebody asked me, and we get high on our horse whenever we start talking about financial independence to someone that doesn't know anything about fire. And I was telling them all of this, and then inevitably the question was always like, well, what do you got to do when you retire in your 30s? And like I would snap back a lot of times and be like, don't worry, like I will I will find things to fill my time. But like after the third time that question got posed to me, I'm like, actually, that's something I should really think about. So I started a note on my phone and I just started writing a bunch of ideas down of things that come whenever I've reached FI. I want to start doing these things instead. And I built this list and I have a lot of fun things. And it's there's a couple of different categories. There's like places that I want to travel to. There's hobbies that I want to try. There's accomplishments that I want to do. So one thing in particular that's on the list that everyone giggles at is I want to read all the Harry Potter books. Like I've never read the Harry Potter books. I read half of the fourth book in sixth grade during required reading. I just carried that book all year long and faked reading it, and I got like half of it done. I want to take a step back now and throughout the whole year, just finish the entire Harry Potter series. I think that would be really fun. But a few other things that interest me. I really want to work at a plant nursery or volunteer at a plant nursery. I want to do some more traveling with my girlfriend. She recently went on an African safari, and I really want to do that now. But yeah, it's cool. And I started making that list with the intention of like these are the things I'm going to do after FI. But now being post FI and realizing I actually want to start designing the life that I don't want to retire from, I'm looking at that list and being like, what are the things I can add in right now, especially the things that don't cost a lot of money. And it's been a real game changer for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that got me thinking about putting my list together as well. I've always had them in the back of my mind, but it's always good to kind of remind yourself. And as you said, you have it in your phone on your notes, and it's just good to
Yeah.
just go through that. Like, oh yeah, maybe I should need to plan that trip now. I've
Yeah.
been thinking about
Give me
it,
one of
talking about it
yours.
for.
Give me one of
So
yours. I'm curious to hear what kind of landed on your list.
yeah, so one thing that's always in them there is been to build a house, like design
Yes.
it, nothing crazy, nothing like sort of big or anything like that, or significant. Just like a simple house, but I've designed it, every aspect of it, garden, etc. I'd love to do that one day, and that's on the
That's
sort of
cool.
someday list.
That's a great one. I love that one too. Yeah, I've built a detached unit with my father-in-law on my list too. I just think it'd be like a
Oh
really fun
right.
project. Like I want to build a podcast studio in our backyard essentially. And I feel like he would have a lot of fun helping me design it and build it. And I don't know, I've been trying to get a little bit more handy too. So I think it's probably a project I'm going to take on relatively soon in the near future.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I used to do a few things like some DIY things around the house when I was younger. I put down tile flooring and all these kinds of stuff. Oh, that's
Oh, get
interesting.
out of here. You're so much further along than I am then. You're going to be building a house one day.
Oh, yeah, I would love to. All right. Yeah, Justin, before we get to the quick fire question round, was there anything else that I didn't ask that you'd love to share?
No, I think you covered a lot of really good topics that I really love to talk about. So I appreciate you letting me share. But yeah, let's jump into it.
All right. Okay, so I've got 5 questions here. Yeah, just first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
I'll start with question number one, and it's what's something you wish you'd done 10 years ago?
Oof. Take a mini retirement. I think I didn't realize it, but I was so burnt out and I had a lot of interesting thoughts floating around my head that if I would have given myself the white space at that point in time in my life, entrepreneurship would have came even earlier and I probably would have been even more satisfied with my career through my 20s.
Nice, nice. All right, question number two. What are one or two daily habits that have helped you in your journey?
I run every single day. I actually have like a 3 year running streak that's going right now. So most mornings I wake up and the first thing that I do is go run 2 miles, and that allows me to have an identity of a runner and anchor on something that's a consistent habit day after day after day. I haven't missed. I'm on like day 1300 or something crazy like that, and I'm really proud of it. And there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into that streak. So that's definitely a big habit for me.
That's amazing because I do know one of your superpowers is consistency, and
Yeah.
that's like you can't get any more consistent than doing that physically running every day. So congrats to you. Question number three: your most important lesson in life.
I don't know if it's the most important, but just this idea recently on that journey that I went through with my whole career and being at a lot of low moments, and my girlfriend kind of picking me up one day and being like, Justin, you need to stop complaining about your life and start doing something about it. And from that moment on I've been very action oriented. And if there's something that's really bugging me in my life, I might sulk in it for a day, but then I remember kind of her words in the back of my head. And the next day I'm like, cool, let's start working on this and let's make a change here.
Love that one. Okay, question number 4. Do you have any transformational book recommendations, maybe 2 or 3, or any other artistic media, movies, or anything like that?
My favorite book that I recommend probably the most often is I Will Teach You to Be Rich, mostly just because of where it fit in my own journey and how transformational it was to me. So any beginner personal finance people that are interested in it, I almost always recommend that. From a podcasting standpoint, this is where I consume most of my media. I absolutely love podcasting. One of my favorite creators right now, if you don't know who he is Jesse Kramer. He formerly hosts the show called Best Interest. Now it's called Personal Finance for Long-Term Investors. That dude is creating some really amazing space in the personal finance world. So if you haven't checked out his show, I'd highly encourage you to go check it out.
Thank you. Thank you. And then the last one is, for anyone listening, what's 1 or 2 small things listeners can do just this week to kind of get to, where you are at the moment?
Oh, well, I don't know about me. You probably don't want to run every single day, but one challenge that I've been making for myself and that I'd like to turn around and make for the listeners is to say yes to one thing that initially you wanted to say no to. So, for example, I last week I got invited to this party. I just had a really long week. I was really tired. Someone invited me to it last minute. I'm more of a planner. Like on Mondays, I like to look at my whole week and kind of know what I'm about to do that entire week. But I got this last minute invite and I said yes. And I met somebody there that I'm so glad that I met, that turned into a friend. And it's because of this one little challenge. I have this like list of goals, weekly goals. And one of those goals right now is to say yes to something I initially wanted to say no to. And I hadn't checked that off at that point in time of the week yet. And I ended up checking it off, and I was just got to go to this party for an hour, and I ended up being there for multiple hours and met this person. I'm really excited that I did it. So I'd like to turn the challenge around to you, listener, and say over the next month, I challenge you to each week say yes to something that initially your gut is like, I don't want to do that, and just see how it feels.
That is great. That is lovely. I love that one. Okay. Yeah, Justin, thank you. That was the quick fire question round. Before we sort of wrap things up, is there anywhere you'd like to send the listeners or any plugs? Please take the floor, Justin.
Yeah, come find me on any podcast player that you're listening on right now. My show is called Five Minded. The premise of the show is to help you achieve financial independence, but have fun doing it. Our 2 shows align so well for that exact reason. I love talking about a lot of things that you probably talk about: sabbaticals, purpose, even some I got 2 episodes that are coming out right now that I'm really excited about that are going to save you money. But I think there's like a little deeper value and meaning to them outside of that too. So if you want to come check out the show, once again, it's Fi Minded or FI Minded. A good place to start if you're a fan of the Pioneers. Jess from the Pioneers is episode 170. That was a great one to start with.
Amazing. All right, Justin, I know you're really busy and got things to do, so we're going to wrap it up there. But yeah, thank you very much for joining the show. It's been a blast. Yeah, and hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Greg, it's been a blast. Thanks again for inviting me on.